You're listening to Dark Trail Confessions. Some places in the wild are more than just beautiful. They're dangerous, mysterious, and sometimes deadly. In this video, we're exploring 4 chilling disappearances in U.S. national parks. Stories that defy explanation and will make you question every shadow in the trees. From dense forests to remote canyons, these are the tales of hikers who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a lingering sense of unease. Viewer discretion is advised. These stories are not for the faint of heart. Story 1. The hiker who walked into the mist Yellowstone National Park is breathtaking. Towering geysers, dense pine forest, and winding trails stretching as far as the eye can see. Tourists flock there for beauty, for adventure, for that feeling of being swallowed by nature. But among the towering trees and endless mist lies a darkness most visitors never notice. A hidden layer of the park that feeds on curiosity and missteps. It was early June when a group of 3 friends, Jason, Marcus, and Lila, decided to hike a trail far off the main paths. Jason was the oldest, confident in his ability to navigate the backcountry. Marcus, younger and cautious, followed closely. Lila, the most adventurous of the trio, carried a small backpack with snacks, a camera, and a notebook, eager to document their excursion. The morning began innocuously. Fog hung low over the pines, curling around trunks and obscuring distant hills. Birdsong was minimal. Even the wind whispered with a muffled hush, almost as if the park itself were holding its breath. As they ascended, sunlight struggled to pierce the mist. The air was damp, smelling of wet earth and pine sap. Lila stopped frequently to photograph the trees, the small wildflowers sprouting along the trail. Jason wandered a few steps ahead, occasionally turning to shout observations, laughing to ease the tension of hiking in near silence. But something was already off. Small things that didn't belong. A twig snapped, but no one was near. The fog thickened unnaturally, wrapping around the group like a living shroud. Shadows darted at the edge of vision. Marcus swore he saw movement that didn't match any animal he knew. Lila tried to laugh it off, but her voice trembled slightly. Jason, confident as ever, shrugged and pushed forward, his silhouette swallowed by the mist. About 2 miles in, the first truly strange thing happened. The trail forked near a small grove, where moss-covered rocks jutted like jagged teeth from the forest floor. Jason stopped at the fork, studying the map he'd printed at home. "That way should be shorter," he said, pointing to the left. "Looks clear." Marcus hesitated. "It feels wrong. The trees are too quiet." But Jason laughed it off. "You two are overthinking it. It's just fog." They continued. Soon, Lila noticed something odd. Their footprints weren't the only ones. Faint impressions in the mud led ahead of them, small, human-like, but strangely elongated. The toes splayed unnaturally, unevenly spaced. "Did you see that?" she whispered, pointing. Jason crouched, examining the prints. "Probably an animal," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. They didn't resemble any creature native to Yellowstone. The deeper they went, the more the fog thickened, and the prints appeared more frequently, sometimes overlapping theirs, sometimes vanishing altogether. By noon, the 3 had reached a clearing surrounded by towering pines. The fog here was nearly impenetrable. A strange, metallic scent lingered, faint but unmistakable. Lila's camera battery began to die inexplicably, despite being fully charged that morning. Marcus tried his compass. It spun wildly, pointing in impossible directions. Then came the whispers, faint, soft, almost melodic, like a voice calling from just beyond the tree line. Jason? Jason. He turned sharply. Did you hear that? It's the wind, Marcus said, voice trembling. Lila shook her head. It's not the wind. Jason laughed nervously. Relax. I hear it too, but it's probably an echo. There's nothing out here. But the fog shifted. Shadows moved in ways the three of them couldn't track. And then, for the first time, Jason disappeared from view, just steps ahead, and then gone. Panic set in quickly. Marcus shouted for Jason. Lila ran forward, calling his name, her voice swallowed by the mist. Then the strange sound returned, louder now, footsteps echoing behind them, but not matching their own movements. The prints in the mud multiplied. A sudden coldness swept through the clearing. The mist thickened further, curling into shapes resembling human silhouettes. A low, almost imperceptible hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. Marcus grabbed Lila's arm. We shouldn't split up. We need to stay together. But Jason's voice rang out from everywhere and nowhere. Over here, help me. They ran toward the sound, calling back. The forest seemed to stretch unnaturally, trees bending in impossible angles. Shadows darted just out of sight, always ahead, always behind. And then Jason screams, sudden chilling ending abruptly. Silence returned, thick and heavy. Marcus and Lila frantically searched, but the forest gave nothing. No sign of Jason, no broken branches, no footprints beyond their own. Hours passed. The park rangers arrived after repeated emergency calls, but they found only fog, strange footprints that faded as quickly as they appeared, and the three hikers' panic-stricken trail of mud. Jason was gone. No personal belongings, no trace, just the forest. Some locals whispered that certain parts of Yellowstone were cursed, or not in the supernatural sense, but as zones where hikers disappeared without explanation, where the land itself seemed different. The fog in those areas moved against the wind. Sounds traveled strangely. Time felt warped. Lila returned home, traumatized. She refused to hike again. Marcus tried to rationalize it as an accident, disorientation, stress, panic. Yet deep down, they both knew the forest had claimed something that day, something unnatural. Even now, hikers report seeing a lone figure standing in the mist, tall, thin, head tilted as if observing. Voices sometimes call names, distorted, distant, echoing from nowhere. Footprints appear where none should exist. Cameras malfunction inexplicably. Jason was never found. His disappearance remains a chilling mystery, one of many hidden in Yellowstone's forests. A reminder that curiosity in the wild sometimes comes at a terrible cost. Story 2. The hiker who vanished in Devil's Canyon. Devil's Canyon isn't famous, not on any tourist map, not in brochures, and certainly not in guidebooks. It's a rugged, narrow gorge in the high desert of Arizona, flanked by jagged sandstone cliffs that seem to twist toward the sky like frozen flames. The wind whistles constantly through the canyon, carrying with it a dry, dusty scent of earth and stone. It was late September when a lone hiker, Ethan Miller, arrived at the trailhead. Ethan wasn't new to hiking, but he was drawn to this canyon for reasons he couldn't fully explain. Something about it called to him, a quiet insistence in the back of his mind. He checked his pack, water, map, first aid kit, and a GPS device, and began the descent into the gorge. The first few miles were uneventful. The sun had begun to dip behind the cliffs, painting the canyon walls in burnt oranges and deep reds. Shadows lengthened, creating shapes in the rock that seemed almost humanoid. Ethan noticed them but shrugged it off. He'd spent enough time alone in nature to know that shadows played tricks on the eyes. But as the canyon narrowed, the temperature dropped. The wind shifted, carrying a subtle, acrid smell, almost like burnt hair. Birds were silent. Even the small desert creatures, the rabbits and lizards that normally scurried across his path, were gone. By late afternoon, Ethan stopped at a narrow ledge to take a drink. The canyon walls towered over him on either side, the cliffs so close that sunlight barely touched the path. He paused, hearing a faint echo, not from the canyon walls, but behind him, subtle, almost imperceptible. Footsteps? He turned, but no one was there. He laughed nervously. "It's just the canyon," he muttered. But the echo continued. It matched his steps exactly, but slightly delayed, like someone else was walking right behind him. He increased his pace. The wind howled louder now, but it wasn't natural. There was a rhythmic quality to it, like breathing. Long, slow, deliberate. Ethan stopped again, heart racing. There, etched into the sandstone, were strange symbols, not graffiti. The carvings were older, worn smooth by time, but distinct enough to be unnerving. Spirals, jagged lines, shapes that resembled eyes. A voice, or what sounded like one, whispered his name. Not from above, not from beside, but from deep within the canyon, echoing strangely. Ethan. Ethan Miller. His stomach dropped. He told no one he was coming here, no friends, no family. How could anyone know his name? The path narrowed to a ledge only a foot wide. On either side, the canyon dropped hundreds of feet into jagged rock. As Ethan moved forward, the air grew thicker, hotter, almost suffocating. The whispering continued, growing louder, more insistent. He tried calling out. "Hello? Is anyone there?" His voice seemed to vanish instantly, swallowed by the canyon. The echoes returned, but distorted, warped, like the canyon itself was mocking him. Then he saw it, a shadow moving along the cliff above. Not human, too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent at impossible angles. It vanished when he looked directly at it. His heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to run, but the ledge was too narrow. One misstep and he would plummet. Hours seemed to pass, or minutes. Time warped in the canyon. Sunlight dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again. The GPS flickered wildly, showing paths that didn't exist. Loops, dead ends, paths that led back to where he had started. Ethan reached a narrow alcove, hoping for shelter. But inside, the walls were covered with more carvings, dozens of them in patterns that made no sense to him, except that they seemed to tell a story. Spirals and jagged lines formed sequences, almost like warnings. And then, the final set of symbols. His name, etched deep into the stone. Panic overtook him. He turned to retrace his steps, but the path had vanished. The canyon itself had shifted, cliffs appearing where there had been open space. The shadow from earlier was back, moving closer, its distorted silhouette flickering in and out of existence. He screamed. He ran blindly. The whispering intensified. "You shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have come here." And then, the canyon swallowed him. Search parties found his backpack days later, placed neatly at the entrance to a side trail. The GPS and map were gone. No footprints, no signs of struggle, nothing. Locals whispered that Devil's Canyon claimed the curious that its walls weren't just stone, but a maze alive, watching, waiting. Hikers who enter the canyon now report strange sounds, fleeting shadows, symbols appearing where none existed before. And sometimes, if the wind blows right, you can hear a voice whispering someone's name. Ethan's disappearance remains unsolved. Authorities chalked it up to a tragic accident, but those who know the canyon insist otherwise. The carvings, the shifting paths, the voices, these are not accidents. Some theorize the canyon is a natural anomaly, a geological quirk that warps perception. Others suggest something more sinister. The canyon remembers those who enter, marking them in ways no one understands. Some say it feeds on curiosity, a living maze that absorbs those who push too far. The mystery continues to this day. Hikers go missing, sometimes leaving belongings behind, sometimes vanishing entirely. Symbols appear on the walls. Whispers echo on the wind. And every so often someone claims to see a lone figure, impossibly tall and thin, watching, waiting, before disappearing into the canyon mist. If you ever find yourself in Devil's Canyon, remember this: curiosity can be dangerous, and some places don't want to be found. Story 3. The Cabin in the Silent Pines. Deep in the northern woods of Minnesota, far from the nearest town, sits a small, abandoned cabin known to locals only as the Silent Pines Cabin. Most people avoid it. The stories say those who venture too close often hear whispers, see shadows, or simply vanish. But for Emily Carter, it was the perfect getaway. A young journalist fascinated by true crime and folklore, she wanted a story that combined both: disappearances, legends, and a place where no one dared to tread. It was late October when she arrived. The autumn leaves crunched beneath her boots, red and gold, painting the forest in deceptive warmth. The air smelled of damp earth and pine resin, sharp and cold against her skin. Emily had packed carefully: flashlight, camera, notebook, and a portable recorder to capture any sounds she might encounter. The cabin appeared suddenly, framed by towering pines. Its wooden boards were gray and weathered, some missing entirely, giving the place a hollow, skeletal appearance. The windows were dark, like black eyes staring out from the forest. Emily hesitated at the threshold. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls of the forest. As she stepped inside, the floorboards creaked beneath her weight, each sound amplified in the stillness. The cabin smelled of rot and old smoke. Dust hung thick in the air, motes swirling in the last shafts of sunlight. Emily set her gear down and began recording, speaking softly into the microphone about the history she had researched. Previous visitors, locals who claimed strange noises at night, and a series of disappearances in the surrounding woods over the past 50 years. She didn't notice the subtle shift in the air, a chill that seemed to pulse through the cabin walls. Nor did she notice the faint scraping sounds outside, almost imperceptible, like nails on wood, moving rhythmically around the perimeter. By nightfall, she lit a small lantern. Shadows from the flickering light stretched across the cabin walls, dancing in impossible ways. And then she heard it, a soft, deliberate tapping at the window, 3 slow, distinct knocks. She froze. There was no wind. No animals could reach this high in the dense forest. "Hello?" she called softly. Her voice seemed swallowed instantly by the darkness. Silence returned, but the unease lingered, thick as the shadows that now pressed in from every corner. Hours passed. Emily explored the cabin carefully, flashlight sweeping across walls lined with strange, crude symbols, circles, jagged lines, and patterns resembling eyes. She recorded everything, her hands trembling. Then came the whispering, not outside, not over the wind, but inside the cabin, soft and urgent, so quiet she almost thought she imagined it. Get out. Get out. She spun around. Empty. The lantern flickered violently. Her breath came fast, fogging in the cold air. A door in the corner, one she hadn't noticed before, creaked open slowly on its own, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Emily hesitated but grabbed her camera and stepped down. The basement smelled worse than the main floor. Damp, metallic, like iron in decay. Walls were lined with old crates, some broken open, others sealed tight. And there in the corner she saw it. A pile of small, human-sized dolls, grotesque in their construction. Each had eyes made from dark, shiny beads sewn into twisted faces. Some were arranged in a circle, others positioned to look as if they were watching her. A sudden gust extinguished her lantern. Darkness enveloped her. The whispering intensified. Hundreds of voices now, layered and overlapping, chanting, calling her name, echoing from all directions. Emily ran, up the stairs, out the cabin, into the forest, but the trees seemed to stretch endlessly. No matter which way she turned, the cabin loomed just ahead, darker, larger, impossible. The moonlight flickered through the pines, but shapes shifted unnaturally. Shadows twisting into humanoid forms. Footsteps echoed behind her, too heavy and deliberate to be her own. She didn't dare look back. Her recorder captured whispers she couldn't understand, in tones that felt old, angry, and hungry. She stumbled into a clearing. Snow beginning to fall, covering the fallen leaves. And there, carved into the ground, were symbols identical to the ones in the cabin, glowing faintly in the moonlight. A figure appeared at the edge of the clearing, tall, thin, and impossibly still. Its face, she couldn't see, yet she felt it studying her every move. Emily ran blindly, losing her sense of direction. When search parties arrived days later, they found her bag near the cabin, inside, camera, notebook, and recorder. But Emily herself was gone. The tapes recorded only static, interspersed with faint whispers and soft, rhythmic tapping, as if someone or something was marking the passage of time. Locals say the cabin waits, that the forest around it rearranges itself. That curiosity draws people in, and the cabin decides who leaves and who becomes part of its collection. To this day, hikers near Silent Pines report strange phenomena. Whispers calling their names, dolls appearing along the trail, fleeting glimpses of a tall, thin figure moving between the trees. Researchers and paranormal enthusiasts who investigate the cabin swear by its dangerous allure. Emily's disappearance remains unsolved. Some speculate she was consumed by the cabin itself, trapped in a parallel layer of the forest, forever unable to escape. Others think something more sinister follows anyone who steps inside the cabin's threshold. A sentient predatory darkness that feeds on fear and curiosity. The mystery is unsolved, the terror ongoing, and the forest waits silently, holding its secrets, waiting for the next visitor foolish enough to enter. Story 4. I was a park ranger, and I found what took them. I worked as a park ranger for nearly 12 years, long enough to know the difference between superstition and real danger, long enough to stop laughing at hikers who swore they'd been watched, followed, or called by name when no one else was around. But I didn't believe in this. Not until the summer I was assigned to the North Boundary District, a stretch of protected forest so remote it barely showed up on maps. No visitor center, no marked campsites, just old service roads, forgotten trails, and thousands of acres of dense, untouched woodland. The first thing they tell you about the North Boundary is simple. If someone goes missing out there, you don't look for them alone. That should have been my warning. The disappearances had been happening for years, always the same pattern. Solo hikers, experienced outdoorsmen, people who knew how to survive. They vanish without signs of struggle. No blood, no tracks, no gear left behind. And the strangest detail, almost all of them were last seen walking calmly into the trees. Not running, not panicking, just leaving, like they were following someone. The call came in just after dusk. Missing hiker, male, mid-30s. Name was Thomas Keene, backpacker, former military. GPS tracker last pinged near an abandoned fire lookout deep in the North Boundary. I remember the dispatcher hesitating before giving me the coordinates. "You sure you want to take this one?" she asked. I laughed. "It's my job." She didn't laugh back. By the time I reached the access road, daylight was fading fast. The forest swallowed light unnaturally there. Thick pines, twisted roots, a canopy so dense it felt like night arrived early. The radio crackled as I drove, static. Then a voice. Not dispatch, not another ranger, just breathing. I slammed the brakes. "Dispatch?" I said. "Come in." Silence. I told myself it was interference. Old equipment, bad signal. That was lie number 1. The fire lookout shouldn't have still been standing. Records showed it was decommissioned decades ago. Yet there it was, looming above the tree line, skeletal and crooked like it had grown out of the forest instead of being built. No birds, no insects, no wind. The quiet was wrong. Thomas's boot prints were easy to spot at first. Clear, confident, purposeful. They led straight toward the lookout, then stopped. No scuff marks, no sign he turned back, no indication he hesitated, just gone. I found his backpack at the base of the tower, neatly placed, zipped closed. Inside were things no lost hiker would abandon: water, food, satellite beacon rifle, and his boots. Both of them, lined up side by side, like an offering. That's when I noticed the smell, not rot, not decay, something old, damp, metallic, like rain soaking into rusted iron. I called it in. Protocol said I should wait for backup. I didn't. I climbed the lookout. Every step creaked, the wood groaning like it was warning me. Halfway up, my radio clicked on again. This time it was clear. "Ranger." My blood froze. The voice was calm, familiar. My voice. "Ranger," it said again from somewhere behind me. I turned. Nothing. At the top of the tower, I found markings carved into the floorboards, hundreds of them, overlapping, deep, made by something stronger than a knife. Tallies, thousands of tallies. Each one scratched into the wood like it had been done in a hurry. Like someone was counting. In the corner of the lookout was a journal, weathered, leather-bound. Not Thomas's. The first entry was dated 1948, written by a ranger. Something is wrong with this forest. People are leaving willingly, smiling, saying they've been invited. Each entry followed the same theme: missing persons, voices, shapes in the trees that moved when no one was looking directly at them. The final entries became frantic. It mimics us, learns us, it waits until you're alone. If you hear your name, don't answer. The last page was blank, except for one sentence carved so deeply it went through the paper. It doesn't hunt. It calls. By the time I climbed down, the forest had changed. The trees felt closer, the air heavier. The trail I came in on looked unfamiliar. That's when I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, matching my pace. I stopped. They stopped. I whispered, "Who's there?" My wife's voice answered, "Come home." I hadn't told anyone she used to say that when I worked late. Something stepped between the trees. Tall, too tall. Its limbs bent wrong, joints moving slightly out of sync, like it hadn't quite learned how bodies worked yet. Its face was unfinished, like someone tried to remember what a person looked like and failed. It smiled. I ran. Branches tore at my uniform. The forest twisted, paths looping back on themselves. Every direction felt wrong. Voices followed me, other rangers, dispatch, my father, my wife, all calling my name, all telling me I was safe. I burst into a clearing I didn't recognize. In the center stood dozens of people, men, women, children, standing still, facing the trees, barefoot, smiling. Their eyes were empty, hollow, like they were waiting for instructions. The thing stepped out behind them, and I understood. It didn't kill them. It replaced them, slowly, patiently, learning, using their voices to lure the next one. I don't know why it let me go. Maybe it wasn't finished with me yet. Maybe it wanted me to tell this story. I fired my weapon into the air. The sound shattered the silence. Birds exploded from the canopy. The spell broke just long enough for me to run. I didn't stop until dawn. When I reached the road, my radio crackled one last time. "Ranger," my voice said softly, "we're still learning you." I resigned 2 weeks later. They closed the North Boundary District to the public. Officially, it's for environmental restoration. Unofficially, they know. People still go missing near the perimeter. Sometimes hikers report seeing someone standing just beyond the trees, wearing a ranger's uniform, smiling, calling their name. If you ever hear someone calling to you in the woods, even if it sounds like someone you trust, don't answer. And whatever you do, don't follow the voice. If these stories unsettled you, you're not alone. Across America's national parks and remote wilderness, there are places that don't want to be explored and mysteries that refuse to be solved. The people in tonight's stories didn't set out looking for danger, but once they crossed a certain line, the trail never led back. If you've experienced something strange in the woods or know a story that still keeps you awake at night, share it in the comments. Your confession may appear in a future episode of Dark Trail Confessions. Subscribe if you dare, and remember, when the forest goes quiet, you're never truly alone.